called Sex, Cars, Strategies, and Catching Up with Things. And sex and cars are, of course, often linked. You see it in ads, you see it in everything else. But I was a teenager in the 50s and early 60s. In fact, I turned 70 last week. And so I always say it's so hard to believe that when, like, in my mind's eye, I'm always like a 19-year-old boy. I don't know. A therapist said to me once, "You don't have like gender dysphoria, do you?" And I said, no, it's just I knew guys had more fun. But anyway, so that's what this is about. Because to me, like in teenage life, this was, again, the mid to later 50s when cars were cars. Right? American cars are cars. Because I lived in Florida, I lived in Georgia, I lived in Niagara Falls. I ended up in high school in San Diego. And so, the big Chevy ones where the tail fins looked like eyebrows, and everything was two-tone, and you could get the white walls even or you could even buy white walls, like that for really authentic touch. And just cars are everything. But cars also weren't horribly expensive. Gas was like really cheap, even relatively speaking. And so you, as a teenager, and certainly as a teenage guy, which I was not, but with teenage guys, they could have a car, and it was the only place where you could have privacy, right? Particularly related to sexual behavior. It was the only place. And so I was a pretty active at dating guys, trying not to face the gay as a Christmas tree thing, and so I dated a lot, and so I always associated so strongly to me with cars. I can be on a sunny day. I live on the North Shore, and all the rich guys come from West Bend and take their cars out, in the sunshine, the classic Corvettes and everything that they couldn't afford then but can now. But anyway, so I have a lot of associations with that. But so I'll just tell you a few adventures of. I used to date this guy. He had a Willys Jeep, and they actually exist now, but they seem to hold in one piece now. I don't know what it is. But his Willys Jeep, it had it was a top down. It had this canvas top, which was already rotting, and none of the buttons would stay together. And so as you're driving along, you go, whoa, whoa, and it had those plastic windows that are already turning orange from the sunshine, in San Diego. Terrible. And then and so we would park. Now, you understand that when you're going to park somewhere to make out, as we called it then, I don't know what you call it now, I shudder to think, but when we were going But when we were going to do this, you want to have two things. You want to be around water if possible, and have a view. And in San Diego, this was not a problem. The only problem was this guy's car, and he was a poor guy, I'm sorry, his dad had died in the war, and he was not rich. And so his car's battery was really quite weak. And so we would park, on the water and the view. We would park, but before we could leap upon each other, he had to run this thing for 10 minutes so that the battery would start whenever we finished, and we could get out of there. So you're not like that Everly Brothers song, "Wake Up, My Little Susie," your goose is cooked, your parents are, what will people think? But you don't want that to happen. And so that's what we do. And I have to say, you understand that sexuality or sexual behavior in those days, and it reminds me of our musicians talking about his religious life, it had to be all clothes on and no touching underclothes. But it's amazing what you can achieve. I think it's called dry humping. I don't know. But I at least found it quite effective. So the car would start and off would go. So then we moved to the Mercedes-Benz, because I had this friend whose father was a very wealthy doctor, and we had really essentially no interest in each other other than that. And also I played a spring bass, he played a cello, would do chamber music, but would also go and, again, the view and the water. But you see, you could not say to a parent, "We're going to make out, me and Jonathan." You couldn't say that. And God knows a parent couldn't ask you, "Are you going to go out and do sexual?" No. And so I would say to Mama, "We're going to the library." we went to the library, friends, because he would pull up in front. I would walk in and go around the card catalog, because they didn't have computers then, right? I'd walk around the card catalog, go out to the Mercedes-Benz, would hit the view in the water, and things would happen. So that was, the car was quite comfortable. I want, y'all want you to keep in mind that cars are cars, and a Mercedes-Benz sedan, it's pretty capacious, And then the next one was, this guy, he had a Seattle Spider. Now, y'all are not probably too familiar with that. You're familiar with perhaps Spyder, S-P-Y-D-E-R. That's the designer, for instance, the Porsche Spider, which you'll, I'm sure, know is the one that James Dean died in. It was a Porsche Spider. Brings a tear to all our eyes. And so in any case, he had this Seattle Spider, which was a working race car, and there are only like 6 in the whole North America, okay? So this is pretty esoteric. And so it was interesting because my mother, again, would not, as I say, could not bring herself to ask me, like, what do you do, or what are you going to do? But with him, she was quite relaxed, because I had met him at church. We were Seventh-day Adventists, so we again have a lot in common, me and our musician friend here. So she trusted him. She didn't worry. She didn't know that this guy was the nearest to, somebody you had to like fight off, just to get through the night, or the evening. It was never the night, because you didn't 10 o'clock you were home. But the big event, the big thing actually going out with this guy was not the sexual behavior, the DH. It was not that. It was after we had done this, the dry humping. Are you forgetting? It's like the AP for the aging process. Okay. So afterwards, we would go to a drive-in like burger place, like an A&W, where you would drive in and they would come out. I don't know if they had roller skates by then. I think even that was passé. But we'd be there, and then there'd be all the couples that had been doing the same thing that are now there. And he would pull this car up. And guys would start getting out of their cars. And they'd come over, and he'd pull this thing, and the hood would go up, right? And that had a 12 straight, if you know what that is. Not 6 cylinders, not 8, 12 cylinders straight. They kind of went from your toes to the headlights, and it was chromed. It was incredible. So that was really what the point of the whole evening was. It was never the sex, right? This was where the excitement really came in. And for me too, I love cars. It was great. I was proud. The guy was just such a bore. He went off to school in the fall anyway. So now we moved to university, and I decided it was certainly time for me to lose my virginity. Now, I have to again qualify that. I needed to have sexual intercourse with a guy because I'd had a relationship with a woman for at least a year, and we were not worried about little drops of blood in the shirts or sheets or anything like this. I mean, we were but it had to be virginity with a guy. So I met this guy. I dumped the guy I was with and met this one at a ski lodge while the other guy's up on the slopes, I had hurt my ankles and was so relieved I didn't do that skiing anymore. So I met this guy, and then it's very clear that when we get back to Berkeley, that we're going to go on a date. And we both know why we're there on that date. But I returned to the vehicular connection, he had a 1954 Chevy convertible. I don't know what it was in the convertible, and it was two-tone, and the chrome sort of outlines where the colors are, and it was white and yellow. I mean, if I see a white and yellow one, I still go bananas, right? So I didn't think of that it was yellow and the bananas really big. The brilliance sometimes is overwhelming. So anyway, so we drive up in the hills. There's no water, but there's a great view. And pretty soon we get in the back of this car. Fortunately, we're both quite short, because it can be a dilemma, as you might know on these cars, if you have to open the doors, right? So that people's feet, In fact, I knew this fraternity guy when I was a friend of mine. He had fixed lights on his doors so that they wouldn't turn on when they were making out in the back, and he had that. But this wasn't an issue. It was in the afternoon, and the guy was short, and I'm not as tall as I'd like to be. So we do this. We have sexual intercourse. And, I knew it happened, but it wasn't, it wasn't. Anyway, so I said to him afterwards. I said to him I'm telling you this, friends, and I don't want you to tell anybody else. Because it's so acutely embarrassing. I thought you have to say something, Marylee. This is the first time you've had sex, well, at least with a guy. This is the first time you've had sex. You have to say something. So I said to him, now, promise. I said to him, if I don't love you for anything else, I'll love you for this. Can you imagine? So he looks at me and says, is this the first time for you? And see, he's kind of frightened. Because if it's the first time, what if I was going to freak out? And then if it's the first time, and since I obviously it had absolutely no sensation, then he's going to have to think, uh-oh, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe he doesn't have enough, maybe he's not really a, like a real guy or whatever. But in any case, we didn't see each other again, and nobody was missing anything about that. There was, I'm sure no implied romanticism in spite of that stupid remark that you're never going to repeat. Okay? So now we move along. We move along many years. I've had an active life. But more recently, the car situation, when it's the water, because we're here in Vancouver, and there's the water and the view. Only these days, or fairly recently, it was a Nissan Quest minivan. So this, but those seats, they go back really fast. It's really nice, But now I actually don't have a car anymore because, I don't want to do a carbon footprint and it costs too much. So I don't have a car. So now I have to think, supposing I run into someone else, and I will speak with anyone after the show. Suppose I run into someone else. I don't have a car anymore. But I live on the North Shore. And sometimes I think about that sea butts. And I think... midnight, the back of the sea bus for public transit and sex. I'm checking that out. Thank you.